Contaminated drinking water kills countless children every day. You can help stop death. Visit lifetoday.org/water for life to give clean drinking water today.
I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You're the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson. We have a very special program for those of you who either are writers or want to be writers. And we're going to talk with someone who is in the industry. Will Parker Anderson is my guest. By the way, he does a podcast. We'll show you that later to help you further. But he's a senior editor at Waterbrook and Multnomah. And those two publishers were small, independent, Christian publishers for many, many years. Come together. They're part of the Penguin Random House family now. But these guys are one of the major players in the publishing business. So if you are a nonfiction writer, or you think you might be, this is going to help you. And I realize this is not necessarily for everybody, but if you know that writer or wannabe writer in your circle, hit that share button and let them know. Be like, hey, this is valuable information. Seriously, you used to have to travel to like an NRB or back when they had CBA and try to get a meeting with these people to get this information. So I know how valuable this is. And it'll be very helpful and instructional. So appreciate you guys being here. Will, welcome to Life Today Live. Thanks for taking the time to sit down with our audience today.
Hey, Randy. Grateful to be here and excited to talk about writing.
Just so people get a little bit of reference, give us a little bit of your background. And I know I mentioned what you do, but tell us a little bit more about what you actually do.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I'm a senior editor now, so I help authors shape their books. I take ideas from, the seed stage where they're just starting out sometimes and help them flesh out what that looks like to develop the idea. And then I walk with authors all the way until the release date. So it's very relational work I do. It's creative work. Of course, I work in Christian publishing, so the goal of every book is to help people walk with Jesus, help them follow him, understand this world that we live in. But before I was an editor, I was a pastor for 10 years, and so helped actually plant a couple churches in Southern California where I live, here in Orange County. You and I, Randy, were talking about music as well. That's a passion point of mine. I'm a drummer and songwriter. I've also been married for 11 years. I got 3 kids who are all 5 and under. So life is just nuts in the best possible way over here. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and what I do.
Yeah. See, all my kids are grown and married and out of the house. So I can actually get some writing done at home these days because it was impossible for all those years with 4 kids running around. But
Yeah.
So when we talk about writing, and again, nonfiction is sort of the emphasis here because they are a bit different in the approaches. Before we get into this, sorry, give us a couple of people that maybe you've worked with that people would recognize.
Sure. Yeah, so I am John Tyson's editor, who's a pastor of Church of the City in New York. We've just started working together, and I'm delighted about that. I'm working on a 3rd book together with Rich Viotis, who, funny enough, is also a pastor in New York, in the city of Queens. I edit for a great writer out of the Pacific Northwest named Josh Butler. And who else?
Jackie Hill Perry, I think I saw on your list. You work with her?
Oh, no, I have not had the pleasure of actually editing her work yet, but I would love to.
Okay.
I would love to.
All right.
Yeah.
Apologies there. Okay, so to the questions. What are the big questions when people corner you at a trade show or wherever? What are some of the first things that they bring up that they want to know?
Yeah, well, the most common one, and this would be good to talk about, is they'll have their manuscript, and usually this is in the form of an email, or if I'm meeting someone in person, like you said, they'll pull up their phone and they'll kind of show me, hey, I have this book manuscript that I've written, or this idea, can you look at it? So as an editor, that just comes with the territory. Everyone is constantly pitching you.
Oh, yeah.
And so one good learning for nonfiction writers, I think, is you really want to find an agent. A literary agent is someone who is going to take your book idea, help you put it into what we call a book proposal, which is like a pitch deck for your book idea. And then because the agent has relationship with virtually all the publishers in your space or in whatever genre you're writing in, they're going to then present your idea for you and open doors that most writers could not open on their own. And that's a huge learning for a lot of writers. They think, well, I'm going to go directly to the publisher. And look, a lot of publishers, they do accept inquiries and submissions. But I've just seen over and over again, writers have their hearts broken. And in some cases, years go by and they're not able to get their idea through, or they're waiting and waiting and waiting for a response only to hear no. And that's heartbreaking. So I'd say, yeah, step one, I get asked, can you read this and can you move this forward? And I always say, no, at Waterbrook and Multnomah, we actually only receive submissions from agents. And so that would be one thing. The other question I get quite often is, what should I write about? What are publishers looking for? Like, give me the formula, not just for a bestseller, but what types of ideas increase my chances of getting accepted by a publisher? And the way that I normally respond is, I think it's the wrong question. Rather than trying to chase a trend or squeeze yourself into a mold or appease, the fickle appetites of publishers, or, trends come and go, I would say start with, what message is God stirring inside of you? What is that topic or topics that just naturally leak out of you in conversations with your family, with your friends, with your coworkers? What are those topics that keep you up at night because you're thinking about them, or get you out of bed because you're excited about them? So start with what God's Spirit is stirring in you. And oftentimes He'll weave these themes through our whole lives, through our vocational lives, our personal lives. Maybe it's some of the hardships that you've walked through. Maybe it's those things that make you angry, the injustices that you see in the world. But whatever it is, I think the best books are the overflow of what God has done in someone's life. It's not contrived. Now, that said, so start there. Start with, what is God doing in you? What experiences and knowledge has He given you? From there, I do think it's okay to ask that second question. Okay, I have an idea, but now I need to position it in a way that's actually going to appeal to publishers. So that's a valid question. Yeah. I would just say it's the second question to ask. And in terms of that, there's so many topics in the nonfiction space. So what I'd say is, one tip is focus on what we call the felt need. And focus on what is going to make a reader pick up this book. When they look at your title, when they look at your subtitle, they should immediately be able to recognize, oh, this is a book for me. I have a problem that this book is looking to solve. And this is very marketing minded, and that's okay. Marketing can sound like a slimy word sometimes, but it just means you're putting the reader first, and you're not just sharing what you want to share, but you're thinking about what readers actually need. And if you can take whatever topic God's given you and position it in that way, it makes all the difference in the world. A distinction I like to make is, your book should be need to know information, not nice to know. There's a huge difference between, hey, I just want to share this because I find it fascinating, and readers immediately responding with, oh, I need that. Yeah. That message is for me.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. My tendency is I like to write about things I've studied that I find interesting, and a lot of it would fall into the nice to know category. And one thing that I have been told repeatedly from different publishers, so it must be true, is that you need more personal stories in there. How much do you look for that personal touch when people, especially when it kind of tends to be topical? I've been getting a lot of pitches for mental health authors lately, and the ones that have that, we always ask, well, is there a testimony here? Is there that? What is that personal connection? Is that something you look for?
Absolutely. Yes, stories are the language of our culture. It's why people have 10 streaming services. Really what they're doing there is they have these curated opportunities to listen and watch stories, and they're captivating. So even if you look at scripture, a huge portion, I forget the exact percentage, is narrative.
Yeah.
So even in God's communication to us, he loves the medium of stories. If you look at Jesus's teaching, more than often he would tell stories and he would ask questions. So yes, I would say telling stories is crucial to nonfiction. However, and this is a pretty huge caveat, probably the greatest mistake that I see, or at least one of, when I get proposals, is someone focuses too much on their story. It's very cathartic. It helps us process as we get our lives onto the page, and that's a beautiful process. But once you move from writing for yourself to writing for others, it's so important to punctuate your personal story with moments for the reader, turning to the reader, moments where you ask them questions, moments where you encourage them to reflect on, okay, here's what happened to me, but what does that mean for you?
Yeah.
And so memoirs are books that are exclusively about you and what's happened to you. And a lot of people unknowingly try to write a memoir.
Yeah.
But I had someone recently ask how much of your book should be stories, and I use the analogy of building a structure. If you imagine writing a book is like building a room, the teaching element where you're giving people principles and a message, that's like the walls and the structure. If you have a room that is all walls and no windows, it's going to feel stifling in there. It's going to be gloomy and dark, a little bit boring. What stories do is they let some light in, they let some air in, they engage our imagination and all of our senses, even as descriptions and stories bring things to life. But if you have a room that's all windows, it's hot in there because the sun just glares in on you. It's not structurally sound. There's not enough, foundation there. And so you really want a balance. I think I stole that analogy from Spurgeon, by the way, as he talked about, out loud communication. But yeah, that's what I'd say about storytelling. You want to find that sweet spot between distilling principles and sharing information, and then sharing your own story at the same time.
Yeah. Application for the reader is important. I tend to build cellars. They're called dank dark spots. No, I'm kidding. I think they're interesting, but yeah, and that, well, we can get into that. I want to show people real quick your website, because this is a great resource. It's writerscircle.co. That's not a mistake. It's not .com. It's .co. And that is a place where there are resources. That is also the place where, if I can click that, you'll see this podcast here and Will's lovely face. This is a really good resource, okay, people? So if this is something you're thinking about doing, you're wanting to do, or you know someone that is, point them there, writerscircle.co, and you'll get more conversations in more depth like this one. But, I think a fairly a valid question to ask, because this is what people have to ask themselves. Some really precious people with great stories. I've read their self-published books and gone, So the question would be, should everyone who wants to be a writer be a writer?
Yeah. Wow. What a question. I think when people hear that question, what they initially think is, should everybody publish a book?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is clearly no. Just like I wouldn't say everyone is meant to be a chef, or everyone who likes music should record an album at a label, or everyone who loves basketball should play in the NBA. It's competitive, and you could spend years of your life trying to attain that goal, and maybe that's not what God has for you. Those are tough words for some people to hear. They have a dream of getting published, and I'll just tell you, as an editor, one of the hardest parts of my job is seeing someone pour out their heart in their writing.
Yeah.
And yet to say, I don't think this is a fit. It's never fun to do that. We get no pleasure from that, but we are just bombarded with book ideas day after day after day. Like there's no way around it. We have to say no to far more than we say yes to. But backing up for a second, do I think those who feel called to write should consider themselves writers and continue to write? Absolutely. Sometimes we get so focused on the goal, I think, of, oh, if only I had a book deal, then my life would be complete, or I will have arrived as a writer.
Right.
When I think about the writing that has impacted me, I think of two moments, and none of them are from a published book. The first one I think about is when my mom was actually in her final moments after a 3-year battle with cancer. I had flown back to my home state of Arizona from college to see her, and she had this notebook beside her where she was writing out her thoughts, because that was the easiest way for her to communicate in those last days. And I'm flipping through this notebook and looking at the different things that she'd said, and I suddenly see one from, I think, the day before that just said, "Gotta hold on until Will gets home." That single sentence is probably the most powerful writing that I've ever encountered in my life. The second was this note that an elderly guy in my church wrote me. I was in like 6th grade, I think, and he had read something I had written. And he just, for whatever reason, decided to encourage me. And he said, "Hey, I just read your piece. It was printed in our church newsletter." How outdated that sounds now. It was literally like this printed newsletter that would go out in my Presbyterian church. And he just said, "I see a gift in you. I think God has called you to communicate his word and to share messages with people." That note has stuck with me my entire life. I didn't even know the guy that well. So what I would say to people is, all of us have opportunities to use the written word in such creative ways. Now, both of those examples were more or less letters. But I have another great aunt who just decided she was going to write down the story of our family and the incredible journey of coming to America and what they encountered when they got here. And this narrative just chocked full of incredible things I never would have known. And so on and on we could go. Maybe if your thing is devotionals and you just want to write about a certain theme in scripture or something you've learned, whatever it is, I would say write it down. Our words are permanent on the page. They outlive you. It's a beautiful opportunity to take that gift and use it with the people that God's actually put in your life. And if down the line it reaches more and it gets published, great.
Yeah. And, I am so glad you said that, because a lot of people think that the ultimate destination for their writing is with a major publisher kind of thing, know, and there's 2 points that I kind of like to hammer. The first one is audience, because the things that impacted you weren't written for a mass audience, and they're obviously personal, but in even some successful writers during their lifetimes, they were writing and hardly anybody read it, and then it got published later. I always figured that I would be one of those guys, that I would be well known after I was dead. But seriously though, when someone feels like they should write, there are so many other places to write, whether it's a journal or a blog, or just something. Shouldn't people not let the publishing world, in a sense, and the natural limitations, be their barometer for whether they're successful? I mean, if you manage to put words down on paper that impact the life of one person, frankly, a lot of times that's our calling. It's just to have that impact on our near one, our neighbor, the Bible would say. How do you encourage people to go ahead and write and use whatever venue you have, even if it's just your own notepad?
Yeah, publishing is a business, and we have to remember that. It's not wrong that publishers are picky, because ultimately, they have to take risks, and they want to know that their investment is going to return something. Otherwise, they have to They have to keep the lights on some way. And so I would say focus on the people that God has given you. I'll read something that I published on my Substack not long ago. I said, here's something writers don't hear enough. You don't need a book deal. You don't need thousands of followers. You don't need to hit a bestseller list. Just be faithful with the words God has given you. The fruit of the kingdom doesn't depend on the metrics of the world.
So
God
good.
is working through your writing, and he will bring it to completion. Now, I had some who kind of rolled their eyes at that and just said, yeah, I'll still take the book deal. Thank you. I love that just candid response. But truly, as I shared those stories, I'd say nobody fulfills their calling by looking around and comparing themselves. I think writing happens in community, but it's not the type of community where you say, oh, I want what they have. Yeah. It's circling up. And this is why I call my newsletter and my podcast the Writer Circle. Writing sometimes, being in publishing, it can feel like this elite inner circle. And the cool kids get in, but everyone else is trapped on the outside, and they're the amateurs or the wannabes. I think that's all wrong. I think God does not weigh and judge things like we do. Yeah. So there's the business side of publishing, but I would just encourage people to nourish your craft and to refuel yourself and to overcome discouragement, which is so easy to fall into as a writer. Surround yourself with just one or two other people who know you, love you, enjoy writing, and get together regularly. If it's once a month, if you're just emailing, you're writing to one another, and find your people. Yeah. And that's going to help you just have longevity as a writer. I could tell you story after story about writers who, like you said, Randy, they spent decades writing into oblivion. Right. Nobody knew who they were. And they did it because they love to write. Yep. And if God has given that love to you, anyone listening, just write. Just keep at it.
That is so true. You can't write because you want to be published. You have to write because you love to write, and you feel called to. So for people, I know sometimes it can be daunting. And they're really, especially in today's media world, there's no reason to let fear hold you down. Do you find that some people, though, feel like they're supposed to, but they're afraid to because, I don't know, whether it's rejection or real, and sometimes it's just the work because, books don't write themselves. It's a lot of work. What do you say to motivate people who feel like they should do something, but they just kind of, I don't know, lack motivation, or they have fear, or they think they have some obstacle like I'll never be published kind of thing?
Yeah, almost they're defeating themselves before they even take a first step.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, okay, so if you're listening to this, I would say if that's you and you felt stuck or you felt unsure what your next step is, if you have felt fear, like I'm afraid of how people are going to respond, if you feel like you lack motivation, really any of those obstacles, I would say start today, sit down, write 100 words and send it to one person. That would be my advice. Don't try to build a website. Don't try to start a Substack or a blog. I would say, nope, just seriously hit pause on this podcast, sit down right now and write 100 words, whatever you want it to be about, and send it to someone. There's no secret strategy or formula for writing other than start as soon as possible and just do it. Probably the number one excuse, and I feel this as a dad of 3 little kids I have a 1.5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old. The excuse I hear is I don't have time to write. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is we find time for the things we truly desire. Our habits reveal our hearts. And I want to have some grace and nuance there because, of course, some seasons are just too much. And that is a reality. Yeah. But I would say we make time for the things that we truly desire. And so there's no guilt here. There's no pressure. It's just, man, sit down and just set a really small goal, like writing 100 words. It could be 50 words, and just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. You know, my favorite writing book, and I haven't read a whole lot, but it is one called On Writing, actually by Stephen King. So, and certainly not from a Christian viewpoint, but as far as the mechanics and the discipline of writing, I found it very insightful. I'm curious for those who you're working with that are serious writers, and maybe, I mean, of course, deadlines are my best friend and my worst enemy because they push me to get things done, but you do feel the pressure. But are there any kind of general habits that, I get it may not apply to everybody in every single situation, but some kind of framework that will lead to an accomplishment that you recommend, or is it really that individual?
Yeah, it's a great question. We all, of course, have different capacities. And so for some, cranking out 4,000 words a week is no big deal. But I encourage people to set up some kind of routine that provides some constraints for them. The power of constraints when it comes to writing is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So for me, it's my newsletter. I know that I have to get it out by every Saturday. I know it's going to be 800 words or less. And so some people have never self-applied those constraints. So when they write, it's just meandering, the sky's the limit. It never feels like it's done.
Yeah.
So some constraints you could apply would be something like, okay, I'm going to do a newsletter where my readers, even if it's 10 people, they're going to get used to and expect to receive something from me at the same day and time every week. Then within that, you could add an additional constraint. And all constraints do is they keep us focused.
Yeah.
And they keep us from getting distracted and wandering off into oblivion and then not doing the thing we really want to do. So another constraint could be word count. I have counseled many writers, write something weekly and send it to people because that helps. There's the good kind of pressure there. But then limit your word count. If it's 300 words, great. That's awesome. Another constraint could be time block your writing. And this doesn't work for everyone, but give yourself 90 minutes to write your 300 words and hold yourself to it. Don't let yourself go 2, 3, 4 hours. Time block it. I think some of those constraints, they start to dispel the perfectionism that we bring to writing. Like, well, it has to be perfect, and it's not done yet, and I need to keep going, and I don't want to send it yet because I'm scared of this or what people will say. It's like, nope, I'm going to ship it. This is all how long it will be. This is how long I have to create it, and I'm just going to do it. And the beautiful thing about that is the more reps you get in, the less scared you feel. You maybe receive some criticism, some negative feedback, and you realize it's not the end of the world. You realize, I actually can benefit from some of these pushbacks. I'm growing as a writer. I often say in conversations like this, Randy, that when I look back on the things I sent out even a year ago, I'm like, oh, that could be so much better.
I do that too.
And it's okay.
Right.
We are growing.
Right.
We are learning, and you only can grow and learn as you do. So those constraints are probably my number one piece of advice for people.
That's such great and valuable advice. And trust me, people, if you're listening going, no, that is great advice. It actually works. Has anybody tried to slip a chat GPT manuscript by you yet?
I suspect here that I don't know about for an official Waterbook title, but I do some freelance work, and that's a can of worms right there.
Yeah, sure. It is. I played with it once, and I will say this: it has a distinct voice. Like you start to go, okay, I would think somebody like you could spot that a mile away. But yeah, so people don't try that. Don't even waste anybody's time with that kind of stuff. But this is great advice. I want to give you the last word. If there's anything that I didn't ask that people need to know, or anything you just want to say, I want to remind people that the writerscircle.co is the great place to go for the podcast and for some great resources. I'm assuming they can sign up for your newsletter there.
That's right. Yeah, if you go to writerscircle.co, you'll see the sign up right there. And that would probably be my parting word is I try to take the questions I receive the most often from writers who want to get published and want to grow in their craft. And I put them into the newsletter every week. I keep it short and sweet. Every newsletter you can read in 5 minutes or less. But I'm just trying to demystify the publishing process and give you a next step in your craft. And for those who feel like they want to get published, to give you next steps there as well. So it's very practical and hopefully rich and inspiring as well to refuel and rekindle your passion for your craft.
I love it. Look, potential writers, I say wannabes, and I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, because if it's on your heart and that's what you want to be, then God's put it there, and you can go start doing it, and you just got some really valuable information. So again, Will, I appreciate your time and your expertise in this field. Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, Randy, thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate you guys out there. Writercircle.co. Start doing it. Let's jump in there. Do what God's put on your heart. Don't worry about it. Do it out of obedience. That's true for everything in life. If God's called you to do something, you've heard his voice. It's time to obey. Let the results be up to him. But again, if you know someone who can benefit from this, hit that share button. If you haven't liked, follow, or subscribe, Life Today TV, do that wherever you're watching or listening. And we'll see you again next time here on Life Today Live.